Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thanks so much for dropping by. So I was really reflecting today that, what Bruno Groening called us to. And and of course, I say Bruno Groening, and if this is a Bruno Groening gathering, so we're going to focus on his teachings. And, having looked at some other teachers and teachings, it's a very universal idea. This universal idea is that there is an infinite, limitless power that is our maker, that is our creator. And in essence, the meaning of life is to connect to that, to be guided by that, to serve that. And Bruno Groening gave us such a simple way to do it. He called it Einstellen, tuning in. A tuning, it has the word Einstein has so many meanings. One of them is attunement, to attune ourselves to the divine. It reminds me of, if you have two guitars next to each other and you pluck a string on one guitar, the other guitar string will start to vibrate at the exact same note. And I think that's what we're here to do, is to tune in, to connect to this divine vibration, and then to be that, to share that, to embody it. These ideas are not complicated. They're not always easy to live out. And Bruno Groening spoke of the spiritual path as a battle, as a struggle. The German word he used, Krieg, it can be described as an all-out war. And here we are in June 2020, and we can see that what we as human beings are up against, which Bruno Groening called evil, other spiritual traditions might call it ego or evil, whatever you call it, there is a mighty force that's harmful, that's destructive. And Bruno Groening was quite clear that to overcome this force, we needed a higher force, a higher power. As he said, Satan is mighty, God is almighty. So to overcome all of our problems, let's tune into the force, the power that's bigger than those problems. This is very easy to do. Please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards. Back, if possible, not leaning against your chair, just in a relaxed, upright position. Now giving away everything not good. All fears, all worries, all judgments. All resentments. Now putting your attention on healing, on the divine, and asking to receive the divine energy and observing your body, noticing what you feel. Having the intention to take this energy in. Really believing in this higher power, that it can solve every problem we're facing as individuals and as a race. But we have to seek the solution. That's our part. Thanks to everyone joining in live, and thanks to everyone watching the recording of this. So, during this time, I've been really reflecting on what's really important. And what comes to me is that what's really important is God and nature and connection with other people and service. And that's really about it. And this is very, very, as I had these realizations, I was really struck by how similar they are to what Bruno taught. Just this essence of that we as human beings, we need nature. The modern civilization likes to pretend that's not so, that nature is our servant, but actually we're dependent on it. And the same thing with God, that we utterly need the divine. And then what is our purpose here in life? Well, Bruno Groening, like many great teachers, like many great masters, modeled a life of service, a life of devotion to God through service, through helping. He had his own way to help. Doesn't mean we're all going to go around and become um, healers, although he didn't like that word, but healers of the magnitude that he was. Doesn't mean that we're all going to go around. Um, it's not to imitate the specifics of Bruno Groening's life, but the spirit of how he lived. He once said, "I am small, but my heart is pure, and only God lives there." So to really be in utter devotion and dedication to the divine, and then to be led. to being led to bring forth our unique gift. As Bruno Groening would often talk about, that we all have a very specific purpose. We all came here with a very specific purpose, and that we need God's help to know that purpose and to bring it into fruition. So let's empty out our hearts of everything that's not God. Let's make some space so that the divine can fill us up with it. When we don't know what to do, we can just ask the divine, what would you have me do? Especially when I get really fixated in something, like, oh, I have to do this, but it's not a peaceful kind of have to. It's kind of like this compulsive have to. And we can surrender. Then I try to practice surrender, saying, this is what I want. What do you want me to do? It takes some humility, which is not the easiest thing to do, to be humble, um, but to turn to the divine. Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? And then to take it, make it even more committed and to watch our thoughts. What thoughts would you have me say yes to? What thoughts would you have me say no to? Bruno was adamant that we need to watch our thoughts. Why? Because thoughts move, and the German word is bewegen. Thoughts push, coerce, um, impel a person to act. And what is our life but a series of actions? But what of our actions, according to Bruno Groening, but the consequences of which thoughts we say yes to? So as we take in this divine energy, let's just practice a little bit, watching our thoughts like a hawk. Bruno Groening called us to follow God, to not follow a person, and not follow, um, to give authority to God. And this is sort of the opposite of how what you could call established religion operates. It's, they, many religions, and this is a generality, but, want the authority for themselves, whether they be religious leaders um, or an organized religion. And I don't want to criticize that approach. It's just Bruno Groening called us to a different approach, to giving the authority to God and trusting in God. And when he spoke about going to church and whatnot, and I love going to church in different temples, so I'm not opposed to that at all. But what he said is that we need to practice what's taught there. To live spiritual principles or spiritual teachings. So let's continue to take in the energy that can help us do that. Observing our bodies, noticing what we feel, intending to receive the divine and be guided by the divine. Bruno Groening called us to check on every thought, whether it was a good thought, a true thought, a thought from God, or a thought from evil. And I believe that's the same attitude he wants us to have with everything that anyone tells us, whether they be a parent or a religious leader or a government, to check in, to not blindly follow. Bruno Groening didn't want us to blindly follow him or anyone. He wanted us to just follow God. Thanks for saying hi, Forever Loving Everything. Begin to wrap up. I'd like to thank everyone who joined in. I mean, there's no other way to say it except it's June 2020 as I'm making this video, and it's the most intense time in human history. Certainly, there have been, very intense things have happened, in concentrated pockets. For example, the Holocaust. For example, the world wars. There've been really horrific and intense things that have happened. And yet, here we are as a race facing the most intense thing that I can think of that we faced as a human race. And so people are racing, governments are racing to make vaccines, but what's really going to solve our problems? Bruno was so adamant that only God. that the ultimate answer to every problem is the divine. My battery's running low. 1 minute. This is going to be interesting. 1 moment. There we go. And how much more so is that true now, when the world truly is in what we could call a worldwide crisis? Well, I thought I was going to finish, but it looks like I'll go a little longer. We have now we have a visible worldwide crisis. But according to Bruno Groening, the human race has been headed on a downhill path for quite some time. And the essence of that downhill path is connecting with evil and not connecting with God enough. Back in the 50s when he was active, Bruno said it's almost to the point where people can't live anymore. The conditions on this planet, while on the surface our material conditions have, become quite prosperous in certain parts of the world, but that the presence of evil was so intense and so dense, and had done so much harm that Bruno said it's almost to the point where people can't live anymore. And that was almost 70 years ago. How much more so today? Bruno called us to believe that the good will prevail no matter what's happening in our personal lives, much less in the big scheme. So it's not easy. It's not easy for me to maintain faith moment by moment, day by day, especially in these conditions we're living in. But what's our choice? What's the other choice? The other choice is to believe that evil is stronger than good. At the root, I think at the root of everything Bruno Groening taught is just this very simple idea that God is stronger than evil. Or as he himself said, the good will prevail. And for me, that's the ultimate leap of faith, that the good will prevail. So thank you so much for joining in, everyone. Thanks for saying hi, Germana. So glad this was calming. And let's connect to the divine. Let's convince ourselves that the good will prevail. And let's ask to be guided how to live each moment, much less how to live our life and what to do with this precious gift of life. Thank you so much for joining in. Take care. Much love.